My sister, Susan, 32, female, and I, 31, female, have never gotten along and our relationship has always been bad. Let's get that out of the way right now because I know my judgment is probably biased because of this. Since we were little, she's had this thing where she would constantly mimic or outdo me. Like back in school, she would jump into every club or sport I was into and aim to outshine me at it. Be it debate, chess, tennis, you name it. It seemed like if I could do something, she was determined to do it better. I had this special sport, something I had been into practically since birth. As I grew older, I dedicated a lot of time to practicing, and not to toot my own horn, but I became quite an expert in it, winning awards that reflected my skill. At the age of 14, my sister suddenly decided she wanted to compete in the same sport. Surprisingly, our parents allowed it. However, she did not have the same commitment to practice. Every chance she got, she would try to make fun of me during practice or try to downplay my skills. When the competition day arrived, it was clear to everyone that she wasn't as polished as many of the other kids. Despite this, she expected a big title. Unfortunately for her, I ended up winning the top title. My parents were very happy, but she threw a tantrum right there in front of everyone. She started to cry and scream, which caused quite a lot of embarrassment for our parents, who had to promptly escort her out of the room. Later at home, my parents tried to gently talk to her and let her know that everyone has their own strengths, and she didn't have to compete with me about everything. They told her that they were proud of her regardless of whether she won an award or not. But Susan began yelling at me in front of my parents and broke my award in anger. This really hurt me because, unlike her, I would work really, really hard to win these awards. My parents reprimanded her, but she didn't care. They made her go for therapy, but she would refuse to speak about her jealousy and resentment towards me. As we got older, she only got worse. Every day getting ready for school was torture. She would make fun of my outfits or mock my hair, telling me how she was ashamed of how ugly I looked. For context, I have always been tall for my age and slender with long red hair. I preferred wearing baggy clothes, unlike my sister who liked wearing skirts and crop tops, but I knew I was not ugly because I would get a lot of male attention even at that age. My mother would chastise her for saying such mean things to me, so then Susan started to bully me at school where she knew she could get away with it. She would rub it in my face that she had cooler friends than I did, which basically meant she hung out with the popular crowd while I preferred to stick with people I genuinely enjoyed being around. I am an introvert by nature and was not loud like her. She would stand in the hallways with her friends, judging everyone, and if I passed along, she would loudly say how I was not her real sister and was probably adopted. During high school, I decided to create my own site on WordPress. I was just 15 and had no idea about how WordPress worked, but I loved writing and wanted to put my thoughts out there. Over time, I managed to amass 2,000 subscribers, and this is how a few local stores approached me to write and promote their products on my page. In the beginning, they would just send me a product, but as I started to gain more subscribers on my blog, I would earn money as well. My parents initially had no idea about this, but then they were surprised that I was earning from doing something that I genuinely enjoyed. My dad helped me open a bank account in my name, which had him as co-owner until I turned legal age so I could save this money for college. When my sister found out, she told me that I needed to share the money with her since it was unfair that I was earning money while she was not. I refused point blank and told her that she was welcome to try her hand out. She tried to get my parents to back her, but they refused as well. So she decided to start her own blog as well. Initially, she claimed it was so easy to write and would mock me, saying that this was not even a big deal. She had also told me that she was a much better writer than me. However, when she got no increase in subscribers, she would get very frustrated and would ask me how it is that I got brand deals from my blog. She started to force me to promote her articles in my blog, telling me that we are sisters, so we should share everything, but I refused to do so because, first of all, she had insulted my writing and was now coming for my help, and also because I didn't really like her writing. After a few months, seeing no result, she gave up on this dream. Next, when it came time for college, our mom went to an Ivy League school that we both aspired to go to. Susan applied to that school as well as a more prestigious Ivy League, but she was rejected. She had to enroll in a university in our city, which was also nice, but not as nice as an Ivy League school. When it came time for me to apply for colleges, she would tell me that I should not even bother applying for Ivy League schools, because if she didn't get in, then there was no way that I would get in. I would point out to her how my grades were excellent, which is what these schools required, but she would tell me that my personality was not fit to enroll in those schools. I didn't listen to her and applied to my mom's Ivy League school and fortunately was accepted. When I got the email, I was afraid of telling her because I knew she would throw a big fit. My parents gently broke the news of my acceptance to Susan when she came over for dinner during a weekend, and as expected, Susan did not take it well. She refused to believe that I had been accepted, and when she saw my letter of acceptance, she started saying how this might be fake, because apparently she was a much better student than me, and she was rejected. My parents and I were getting really tired of her antics because I genuinely never saw her as my competition, while she would go above and beyond to shit on my achievements. My dad tried to talk to her about how she could have congratulated me, and my mom urged her to go to a therapist again. But Susan got pissed. She angrily yelled at them about how she was their first child, so she was not the problem, and how she never wanted a sibling. Then she angrily walked out of the house in the middle of dinner. Ever since then, I made up my mind to keep my distance from her because I understood that we were getting older, and she should be over this jealousy thing by now. College really changed me. I made new friends and hung out with them. The distance allowed me to focus on my own growth and development without the constant shadow of comparison. I pursued activities and formed connections based on my own preferences rather than in reaction to her attempts to one-up me. As the years in college unfolded, I discovered new passions and interests that were entirely my own, and I relished the freedom of being myself without the weight of constant competition. While I hoped my sister would find her own path and embrace her individuality, our relationship continued to be strained. When she could not compete with me academically anymore, she started to get competitive with our personal lives. She was always pretty passive-aggressive when I got a boyfriend before she did. When my boyfriend Finn and I decided to move in together, she never missed a chance to make snide comments about it. Eventually, she found a guy called Tom who seemed perfect for her, and her mean comments started to mellow out. I could sense that she had this desire to get married first and be the first to have kids, but honestly, it didn't bother me much because I wasn't in any rush. Then, on Christmas, she announced that she was getting married in 2023, and I genuinely felt happy for her. I even congratulated her and her fiancé, and she hugged me for the first time after a long time. I thought we had finally taken a step towards mending our relationship. In the months following my sister's wedding announcement, life took an unexpected turn. We received a call from my boyfriend's younger brother, 24, who had just been told by his doctor that he was dealing with a very aggressive disease. The news was hard to fathom, and without hesitation, we rushed to his side to offer our support. My boyfriend was very close with his brother, and I could see how he was struggling to accept the news. My boyfriend and his brother had also lost their father at a very young age, so they knew how painful it was to lose a loved one. While we were staying with his family, my boyfriend popped the question to me one night out of nowhere. I was surprised because even though we had discussed getting married to each other, I didn't think he would do it at this time. My boyfriend told me how he was afraid that his brother may not live to see us get married, and because he loved me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, he didn't see any reason why we should delay it any longer. I understood his perspective completely and agreed because I loved him, and I also recognized the profound happiness it would bring his little brother and the rest of the family. We discussed, and Finn and I both agreed that we were not the ones for extravagant weddings with a massive guest list. Instead, we wanted a simple celebration surrounded by our nearest and dearest. His family and his brother were extremely happy when they learned of our engagement. I watched his little brother cry tears of joy and hug us. The only thing that nagged in the back of my head was my sister's wedding, which was also approaching. I didn't want her to become competitive again, and I thought we were too old now to even be this immature, so I decided to call her and have a talk with her first before I even informed my parents. I gave her a call, knowing that she was aware of my boyfriend's brother's health situation, and shared the news about the proposal and explained that we planned to have a small wedding this year with just close family and friends, including her, my parents, grandparents, and a few friends. My intention was to ensure that she could still have her big wedding as planned, and I was not overshadowing anything. I told her how much it meant to Finn's little brother that he could be a part of our celebration. However, Susan got upset. She immediately started accusing me of being jealous and suggested that I was using a dying person to rush into getting married first. She told me that this is why she has always hated me since I was born. I was hurt by her words and broke down. I was already having a difficult time processing Finn's brother's disease, and now my own sister refused to accept that this had nothing to do with her. I told her how she was the first person I had called in our family to share the news because I thought for once we could both be happy for each other. But alas, she was back to her old ways. Susan yelled through the phone that I was just a jealous snob and that she would never attend my wedding. She was so pissed that she even screamed that she wished my boyfriend had died instead of his brother, which would have stopped me from getting married. I was really shaken up by how much hate she still had for me, and started to doubt my decision. When I talked with my parents, they assured me that I was not doing anything wrong, and that they were happy for both of their daughters. They told me that regardless of Susan, they would be flying down to attend my wedding. I was grateful that my parents understood my intentions and didn't blame me like Susan. We had the wedding the next day, and it was small and intimate, just like Finn and I wanted. We took pictures with his brother, and everyone was so happy for us. When I uploaded some of my wedding pictures on social media, I received a call from Susan. I thought she was calling to maybe apologize or congratulate me, but instead, she started to say how I had to delete my pictures from social media because she didn't want our friends and family to find out I had got married before her. She told me once she was married, I was allowed to post my wedding pictures. I refused and put my foot down and told her how ridiculous it was for her to ask me to hide my wedding. I told her she could hate me as much as she wanted to, but I was done with trying to make things right with her. She called me insufferable and uninvited me from the wedding. I told her that I was fine with it and asked her to just leave me alone. Finn and I were happy in our marriage. He had a high-pressure job and was not allowed to take any more leaves, so we had to fly back home after the wedding. He had always been an incredibly attentive boyfriend, and that quality seamlessly transitioned into our married life. As a husband, he remained devoted and considerate, making sure our relationship remained a priority despite the demands of his career. A few months later, Susan got married to Tom as planned. Even though I didn't go to her wedding because she had uninvited me, I did send her a huge bouquet of flowers and a note congratulating her. I saw all her wedding pictures and was really happy for her. However, just a few weeks after their marriage, my mother called to tell me how Susan had been cheating on Tom with one of her co-workers, and he had just found out. This was a huge scandal, and everyone blamed Susan, who tried to defend herself by saying she wanted an open marriage, but Tom refused her. In the end, Tom applied for annulment of their marriage as he refused to stay with her. We felt sad for the poor guy, as he seemed to be genuinely in love with Susan. As if this wasn't bad news enough for our family, Finn's brother also passed away during this time. My husband and I rushed to be there for his funeral rites, and he was a complete wreck throughout everything. I don't know why, but something inside my husband just broke, and Finn was never the same after that. He was not attentive or loving anymore. He would get angry very quickly for small things and start raging on everyone. I pushed him to go for grief counseling, but his behavior continued. He stopped going to the office, and eventually he was kicked out. He would sit in his pajamas the whole day, just playing video games or watching sports. I was a paramedic who worked 12-hour shifts and was the only earning adult during this time. I would try my best to talk to my husband, but he would never take me seriously. No amount of counseling or therapy seemed to help because he refused to help himself. I started noticing that something was off when he would constantly start to hide his phone around me. This had never been the case before, so I became suspicious. He would consistently ask me when I was coming back from work and urge me to stay out late. He would not spend any time with me or even ask me little things like how my day was going. He would constantly be spending money either going out or buying himself gifts. During this time, I found out that I was 3 months pregnant. I had not been getting periods, but I assumed it was due to work stress. Never in a billion years did I imagine that I would be pregnant. When I told Finn that I was pregnant, he seemed neutral. I told him straight away that if he didn't want to be a father, he was welcome to walk away from our marriage. He assured me that he was happy for us. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I dealt with severe sickness, and honestly, it may have led me to unintentionally neglect my husband even more, as I was distracted by my body issues. Being sick had taken a toll on every aspect of my life. I hadn't been able to work for 4 months and stopped going out to meet friends. I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum, and the effects had been pretty unbearable. That pregnancy had been far from easy, and my parents had even stepped in to help with household chores, since I was too unwell to do anything. Throughout all of this, Finn had managed to get a job, and he was supporting both of us. I had assured him that after my pregnancy I would join back the workforce, as I didn't like staying at home anyway. We would sometimes fight when Finn would come back home after work, as he would call me lazy or dramatic for not doing anything around the house, even though I would be in pain. On the day my water broke, I called Finn 12 times, but he did not pick up my call even once. I sent him a text saying I was about to have the baby and he should meet me in the hospital. I asked my parents to drive me to the hospital, and they readily agreed. As I am in the hospital bed, writhing in pain while waiting to give birth, I receive a notification on my phone. My mother, who was in the delivery room with me and holding my hand, checked the phone because we assumed it might be Finn. Her eyes widened in shock as she read the message. I asked her what it is, and she refused to tell me. I asked her again, as I started getting bad thoughts in my head, and pleaded with her to tell me. She handed me the phone, looking extremely sad. As I opened my messages, I found a picture of my sister with Finn lying together in bed. And Susan had sent a message to me saying, "Good luck being a single mother because I have taken your husband." I was speechless reading the message. I could not believe my eyes and called Finn. He picked up the call after the 4th ring and casually asked me why I was calling him. I started shouting and asked him what the hell he was doing with my sister, and he simply replied that he had fallen in love with Susan. He explained how she supported him through his bad times when she reached out to him after his brother's death and they had been talking to each other for a while. Apparently, one thing led to another, and they had been having an affair behind my back for months now. He told me that he wanted to hide the affair until I had given birth, but Susan didn't want to keep up the lies anymore. Clearly, I knew that Susan had knowingly waited until this very moment to make this news even more painful to me. He started to apologize, but I cut him off and told him that I didn't care about his apologies and I would see him in court. Cheating was a big no-no for me, and even though my heart was broken in a million pieces, the love of my life and the father of my child decided to backstab me by sleeping with my sister. I would not let this break me down. I cried throughout my delivery from the heartbreak and pain. Thankfully, despite this, my daughter, Aurora, was born healthy and thriving. My mother cried in tears of joy, and later my dad would not stop staring at my baby and congratulating me. All my family members and friends came to visit me to show their support. I made sure everyone knew that Susan had slept with my husband and sent me that picture. My parents called Susan and told her that they were done with her and that what she had done was unforgivable. They told her that she should never call them her parents because they were ashamed of giving birth to her. Susan tried to protest and say how Finn and her were in love, but my dad assured her that she was off their will. We blocked her from our lives as well as our phones. Some of my cousins and relatives did send her nasty messages, and I did nothing to refrain from them. What she had done needed to be called out. I also informed Finn's mother about what her son had done, and she was shocked. She did try to talk to Finn, but it was all too late. I was going to divorce his sorry ass, and no one was going to stop me. I moved out all my things, and my parents helped me shift it all to their house. Finn did try to confront me and tell me how he had been thinking, and after talking to his mother, he realized that he had made a huge mistake, but I didn't even spare him a glance. I refused to let him see our daughter until we cleared it up with the court, as I didn't trust him around our child. What he and Susan had done was unhinged, so I didn't want Aurora to be exposed to all of that. While I lived with my parents, I met with a good lawyer and filed for divorce. During the divorce proceedings, Finn fought hard to refuse alimony, but because he had cheated on me during the marriage while I was still pregnant, the judge refused to let him get away with it. For custody, I got primary custody, and he was allowed to see our daughter only with supervision. My lawyer did a great job in showing evidence of how Finn had suffered from depression and aggressive behavior after his brother had passed away, which was potentially a red flag. It's been 8 months now since my divorce from Finn. He regularly sends child support, but other than that, he hardly comes to visit our daughter. He has tried talking and apologizing to me a few times, but I pay no heed to him. I have gone back to my work because I need to provide for my child while my mother babysits Aurora. Then, after I come home from work, I take over. Aurora is the only reason I have been able to keep my head up and keep my life moving. Yesterday, out of nowhere, I received a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, I heard Susan on the other line. I froze in shock as I had blocked her from my contact list months before. Susan begged me not to cut the call and started to tell me how she had been trying to get in touch with me for months and finally decided to call me from her friend's phone. I told her firmly that I had nothing to talk to her about and asked her not to call me again. However, she immediately rushed to say how Aurora was going to have a brother very soon. A mix of shock, disbelief, and a tinge of anger swept over me. I asked her for an explanation, and she told me how she was pregnant with Finn's child. She continued to say how I should forgive her now for the sake of her child, as she was going to be a mother, and how we should move past our differences. I firmly reiterated to Susan that I did not care if she was pregnant or not, because I wanted nothing to do with her. Hearing this, Susan started to scream about how Because of me, our parents and the rest of the family had stopped talking to her and did not even return her calls. She said how Finn refused to accept her pregnancy and was pressuring her to abort, and how she had no one to help her during such a difficult time. I laughed, hearing her pleas, and reminded her how she had decided to sleep with my husband while I was pregnant the entire time, and how she sent me that inappropriate picture during my childbirth. I told her that she had made her bed. Now she should lie in it, and happily told her to enjoy being a single mother without any support system. Since our call, I have talked to my friends about my sister, and I have received mixed reactions from everyone. While some of my friends think I'm doing the right thing, there are a few who think I'm being too cruel, especially because I know firsthand how difficult it is to be alone during a pregnancy. So here I am on Reddit to get an unbiased opinion. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she slept with my ex-husband and destroyed my life. Update 1. Okay, guys, I have received a lot of comments and it has given me a lot to think about. I would like to clarify that I blame my husband as much as I blame my sister for what they did to me. The reason it hurt me more that Susan did this to me is because she has always competed with me all her life. I have never understood why. All I ever wanted was a big sister to look up to, yet I got a sister who was a bully. I will never forgive her, no matter what anyone says. However, I will talk to my parents and make it clear that they are welcome to have a relationship with Susan and her son if they want to do so. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update and people have been hounding me to give an update. Sorry, I have been busy with work and childcare. By the way, Aurora is doing just fine for some of you who have asked me about her. She is an adorable child and I keep falling in love with her every day. Finn doesn't really visit her and I honestly don't mind. When Aurora grows up, I can have this conversation with her. Until then, she is happy being taken care of by me and my parents. Now, coming on to the main update, I did have a talk with my parents and let them know that Susan was pregnant. They were shocked, just like me. I told them how it was Finn's child and he wanted nothing to do with her, apparently. My mother started to cry and I felt emotional seeing my parents in distress. I could see how much my parents were disappointed in my sister. My dad finally called up Finn to have a man-to-man conversation. Finn spilled the truth. He told us how after our divorce he had stopped seeing Susan since she lost interest in him and dropped him. She started going out with multiple men and he was really hurt, so he stopped pursuing her. Then a few weeks later, she contacted him and told him about her pregnancy. Finn told her that since they were not married and had no plans of getting back together, she could potentially decide not to go through with the pregnancy. However, Susan told Finn how she wanted to be a mother just like me and that he should prepare himself. Finn pleaded with her to think this through since pregnancy and childcare are not easy, but Susan apparently told him that if I could do it with Aurora, then she could do it also with her son. Finn told my dad that he was ready to pay child support but wanted no relationship with the child. Since this conversation, my parents have realized that Susan hasn't changed at all. She is clearly having this baby to somehow compete with me yet again. Honestly, it is exhausting and I don't want Aurora to grow up like I did, so I want to keep myself and my daughter away from all of this. I told my parents that they were welcome to talk to Susan and have a relationship with her if they wanted, but they seemed reluctant. I have also started looking for houses so I can move out of my parents' place with Aurora. Update 3. Hi, my fellow Redditors. I am updating this after 5 months. I'm thankful to everyone who's been keeping up with my posts and sending me sound advice. I did move out of my parents' place as I had updated earlier, and currently Aurora and I are living on our own. I have hired a babysitter who takes care of my daughter while I'm at work. It feels good to finally have my own space. Being a single parent is hard, but I am managing every day. Susan gave birth to her son, and my mother was the only one who went to meet her while my dad refused. My mother has told Susan how disappointed everyone is with her for what she has done, and that the only reason she came to see her was because of the child. Susan did beg for forgiveness, but my mother told her that our relationship with her was done. I'm sure it must hurt my mother to cut off her daughter, but Susan has done things that make it hard for everyone to forget. My dad wants nothing to do with her and has stayed true to his word. Meanwhile, my parents continue to support me and Aurora however they can. They regularly visit us during the weekend. Finn continues to pay child support not only to me, for Aurora, but now also for Susan's child. I can't begin to write how embarrassing this is. I have spent many nights crying into my pillow alone because I still struggle with this betrayal. This is why I have been going for therapy, and I understand that healing myself will take some time. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.